Hello everybody, good evening, welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge. I hope you're all doing well this evening for the United Stands Sunday show. I'm sure we're going to be, I know what we're going to be talking about. We're talking about the Glazers, aren't we? We're going to be talking about the sale of Manchester United, the future, what Sir Jim Ratcliffe's quick fix is to win you over. Some of you already won over. But I really want to get into the Q&A part tonight. If you've got strong opinions either way, or you want to pose questions because you're confused, this is the show to do it. I've just got to say, not feeling great about Man United, but Rap Wars, I've got to give you a shout out. You made me smile just before I went live. He's calling me Sancho Bridge, and I couldn't understand why. And then I was like, it's because I'm late. So, you know what? Comedy never dies. So well done. I thought that was very, very good. Very, very good. But you know what? There was a story the reason I was late is there was a story posted on United Stand Twitter about United and Chelsea demanding the stop of the 3 p.m. blackout. And remember what I said to you a few times over the last few months, but certainly last night. The Glazers aren't staying for 3 years to give a handover to Sir Jim Ratcliffe. The Glazers are staying for 3 years because they want and believe there is a way of making more than $5.5 billion, which Qatar were going to give them. And how do Man United, who are terrible on the football pitch, increase their value? 2 ways. Super League, TV deal. I mean, that to me is perfect timing, the article in the Mail, that is basically saying this, that Manchester United and Chelsea are, there's a growing clamour among Premier League clubs, including Manchester United and Chelsea and the owners of those clubs, to scrap the Saturday 3 p.m. blackout that prevents games in that slot being screamed live domestically. If that gets scrapped, every club in the Premier League makes a shitload more money. And I think that we all know why the Glazers are staying around, and they're not staying around to help Sir Jim Ratcliffe buy the football club. They're staying around for financial reasons, of course. I'm glad everyone loved the Sancho Bridge thing. It's nice to bring a bit of comedy in to a very depressing time. But I also want to say as well, I'm very opinionated. You may well know. Sunday night show's very different to other shows like Friday night. Friday night I'm normally had a drink. Sunday night it's the flagship show and we try and do things a little bit differently. What I really want to make clear, and I'm sure most of you know this, is that I'm not dictator Bridge. I am opinion Bridge. I have strong opinions. I get moody about them. I get stubborn. I admit that. But I'm not here to trample your opposite opinions. I may well do that in explaining my opinion, but I'm not here to tell you what to think. And if you think Sir Jim and the Glazers offer Man United a future, that's up to you. Some people wanted Mason Greenwood back, some people didn't. Some people wanted Pochettino instead of Ten Hag. You know, it's what makes the world what it is. There has to be different opinions. What I would say is that I don't understand the people that are giving Sir Jim a chance. I don't understand it. Because for me, it's just very contradictory to have listened to those people for the last 10 years moaning about the Glazers out, and then to be sat there going, this might not be too bad. This might be quite good. This might be what Man United need. In an analogy, this sums it up perfectly for me. We've missed out on the cheat code. I never wanted the cheat code, you know. Manchester City have the cheat code. Manchester City are the people who sit and do an exam and have the answers. That's what Abu Dhabi gives Manchester City. They have the cheat code. And we've ripped the piss out of them. And we've said it's been bought on a cheat code. We've said they've got, you know, oil. That's what they do. Man City have got the cheat code. Newcastle have got the cheat code. And that's football. That's what football is. If you don't think football is about who's got the biggest wallet anymore, you're a fool. You can't beat it. Yeah, Brighton are fantastic, but they're not winning the league. It makes me laugh. You know, we want to be like Brighton. We want to find all these, you know, great scouts and bring these players in. Brighton are going to win fuck all. They're not going to win the title. Brighton box above their weight for a small club. Man United can't be Brighton. We can't be scouting players that no one knows about, putting them in the first team and thinking we're going to win the league. The teams that win the league because they buy the best players. That's what happens. And Man City do that. They've got the cheat code. Newcastle are doing it. They've got the cheat code. Other clubs will do it. I never wanted that cheat code. I never did. I didn't want to be state-owned. I didn't want a billionaire to own the football club until about 2 years ago, and certainly a year ago when the Glazers put the club up for sale. I was like, at the end of the day, I've seen 10 years of United try various ways of being successful, and we failed. And ultimately, you can put that down to director of footballs, managers, owners, but I think we would have failed anyway because it's not sustainable what United tried to do. It's always, one good summer and then 2 crap summers and then sack the manager, then one good summer, and it's never sustainable. No managers had 2 or 3 good summers in a row, have they? I agree. Why does every other country not have the blackout and we do, says Martin. Short of quitting Man United forever, Mark, what chance do we have to put to hope Sir Jim's vanity project works? I just want to find a way to come to terms with it. We'll talk about that, Fahad. And do you think the Glazers will eventually leave, even with Sir Jim Radcliffe coming in? Thoughts on him taking over football side of things, says Rania. We'll talk about that. Hi, Mark. Serious question. Please, can you ask the right journalist? Is there an amount of debt we hit to cause FPL Premier League intervention? PS, has Adam left the United Stand, as MJR? No, Adam was on the United Stand on Thursday. So I don't know what that's all about. Maybe you can enlighten me. Not as far as I'm aware. But look, in relation to look, I have an analogy here. Sir Jim Radcliffe simply offered the amount that the Glazers were willing to sell for, 25% of the club. How is it his fault, says Rajan? Someone want to explain that to Rajan, because I feel like I've done that till the cows come home. Rajan, Sir Jim Radcliffe got into bed with the Glazers, did a deal with the Glazers, and kept the Glazers in the football club. That's why it's his fault, in my opinion. Shall we take a guess of Todibo or Thuram from Nice to win us all over? Let's not fall for it. We wanted a full sale, says Leo. And I don't want to get anyone in trouble, but the fans can hit back if we take some risks. I will be buying short-term puts at $20. Enough puts, say every Monday, could be our personal letter of intent, says the Society. There are things to be done. It's just whether people have the appetite to do it. There's a lot of phone calls and messages and emails being sent. But look, I think with regards to this, I want to finish this story and then I want to get into some of your good questions. Manchester United had the opportunity to get the cheat code with Qatar. Some people didn't want that, but my stance was this: United fail in the exam because we don't have the answers. Man City and Newcastle win the exams because they have the answers before the questions come. They've paid for those answers. They've got those owners. It got to a point with me, sadly, where football has become about that. If you don't have that type of ownership, you will not be successful, no matter how moral you think you are. And some people feel that the Sir Jim Radcliffe ownership model of Man United is far more moral than having Qatar come in with endless money and just buying success. And that's absolutely fine. I just disagree with you. I don't think you can be sustainably successful year on year like we used to be without the model that Man City have. That's sad, but that's the way football's going to go. In fact, I think only more and more billionaires are going to start buying football clubs. So, you know, for those people who think that they don't want Qatar because they don't want that type of ownership model like Man City, fine. You don't want to win. That's up to you, because we won't win. We won't win. It won't happen. And also, how is Sir Jim Radcliffe's model more moral than Qatar? He's done a deal with the Glazers. He's borrowing money to buy Manchester United. He's not clearing the debt. And on top of that, he is in a situation where every other club is in a better position than ours already. So for me, if you want an analogy, the destination we want is Manchester United being successful. And if that was a city on the other side of a country, then Qatar basically were going to drive us there very, very quickly. We need to get to Manchester United successful city. Get in the car, I'll take you there in a Ferrari. We'll be there in no time. So Jim's model is we will try and get there. We will trek across open, vast spaces inhabited by killer whales and killer sharks, and we will swim through those waters. We will then go through -20 temperatures where there's polar bears and all sorts of shit, and we might make it. But it will be a moral journey, and it will be a hard journey, and we might make it, but we might never make it. And that's how I look at this. I look at it and I go, well, look, we can all get moral about this, but for me, the travel to success with Qatar was going to be in a Ferrari and very, very quick. And the travel to success with Sir Jim and the Glazers will involve many perils that we might actually cease to exist along. So that's my stance on it. I just think that we had the cheat code there in front of us, and we've basically gone to the front of the class, ripped it up and go, we don't want to do it like Man City and Newcastle. We're going to do it our own way. We're going to study hard and get the same results of them. How can you beat somebody who has the answers by not having the answers and studying? It's just really hard. It's really hard. And they'll always have the answers. And I don't think we ever will because we're too crippled. Game over United. Glazers out. Sir Jim out. Full sale, says Krista. And 25% is worth 1.3 billion. So is the club worth 5.2 billion? Yet Qatar offered more. Second point, Glazers will demand 10 billion and Jim will never be able to afford it. We're screwed. So safe. You're wrong, Mark. The likes of Bayern and Real Madrid are successful because of the structure they have, in which we don't, says Mohammed. And we can't blame cheat code City. We spend more on transfers and wages than they do. With a structure, we should be as good or better than them, says Warren. But Warren, I think that's a very naive and simplistic point. Mental health first. If Sir Jim's won, I'm done, says AC. It's a very simplistic point to say we've spent more than Manchester City because we quite simply haven't. We've put ourselves into massive debt to spend that money. We've borrowed that money and we're in debt because of it. We can't afford a stadium like Man City. We can't afford infrastructure like Man City. And we can't afford to do it year after year after year like Man City. We may well have spent more on transfers, but we're loaded up on debt. And I think that this is the most important thing, just to analyse where we are at the moment. Sir Jim Ratcliffe is going to buy 25% of this football club and will be given control of the sporting side of the club. And people are acting like this is some sort of major breakthrough. It's just a change of CEO. Like, the Glazers didn't run the football side of things anyway. They've never run the football side of things. It was always a myth. The Glazers' position doesn't change. They're not taking a step back like the papers are reporting. They're doing what they've always done. Ed Woodward ran the football club, then Richard Arnold ran the football club. Joel and Avram didn't do the reporting to Mason Greenwood and decide to bring him back. Richard Arnold did. So this whole Sir Jim's going to get hold of the footballing side of the club and the Glazers are going to take a step back, that's no different. Any big decision still will need the Glazers sign off. If Sir Jim Ratcliffe says, I've got 300 million quid and I'm going to sign Mbappe, he can't just go and do it. He's only got 25% of the club. He can't do that. He can suggest it and the Glazers can go, we trust you, go and do it. But they will get the final say. So Jim Ratcliffe is not going to have total control of United's sporting side. He's basically going to be a glorified CEO. He's going to run things like Richard Arnold and Ed Woodward did. And the Glazers will sit that back and count their money. There's no change other than we're going to have a different person running the football side of things. The Glazers never did. They didn't run day-to-day football operations at Manchester United. So Jim apparently now will. And does Tadibo, Thuram, and a sporting director like Paul Mitchell make you happy that this is going to happen? I think there's a multitude of things that need to happen more importantly. And I'll tell you for why. I'm not impressed by a new sporting director. I'm not impressed by a couple of signings in January because people are acting like we haven't seen it before. I've seen Mourinho's first summer, Pogba, Zlatan, Mkhitaryan, Bailly. I've seen Ten Hag's first summer, Casemiro, Antony, Martinez. I've seen Man United. I've seen it with Van Gaal as well. I've seen big first summers. In fact, there was a story that came out today that Sir Jim Ratcliffe is going to spend money on the team before he spends money on the stadium because he wants to hit the ground running and get people on side. Well, I don't... The problem with that is it sounds to me like I've got 100 million quid. Do I spend it on players or do I spend it on the stadium? And that's my whole problem. We shouldn't be prioritising because we should have the money to do it all. And that's what the Glazers have just said no to because they want to stay and make more money. We basically said no to an owner that was going to spend money on infrastructure, stadia and players straight from the off. Now we've got a situation where it's let's spend on players first because we need to get the fans on side. Let's try and get good on the pitch first because we need to get the fans on side. Or is it let's spend money on the pitch because ultimately the stadium's shit anyway and people will put up with that and we desperately need to be in into the Champions League because that's where it's going to make us some money. I'm not fooled by... this to me is just more of what we've seen before. I absolutely expected and said this months ago that even if Sir Jim gets hold of the club, we will still buy players because that's the quickest way to spin the fans in your favour. Oh, look at me, I'm buying all these players. We're in for this, we're in for that. But will you do it for the next 5 years? I don't see how we can. We haven't got the money to do that. So I expect some big gestures to, oh, look at the change now. We mean business. We're buying players. What, like we did with Mourinho in the first year? Like we did with Van Gaal in the first year? Like we did with Ollie in the first year? Like we did with Ten Hag in the first year? I'm not convinced by a new director of football and spending a bit of money at the start, because I think it's just the quickest way to mug the fans off. It's the quickest way to go, this is what the plan is. What will convince me, in some way, shape or form, is what is the plan? And I don't think we'll get it. You know, I've seen people, and look, I'm not, everyone's entitled to their opinion. I can't not say that. But I've certainly seen people who are basically cheerleaders for the Glazers and Sir Jim Ratcliffe out there. They're talking about stuff like they know like they're in the fucking boardroom. They're talking about, this is what's going to happen. Oh, it's such a big change having Sir Jim with 25%. 25% is more than 0%. You know, 25% could be the road to 50%. You can't get to 50% if you haven't got 25%. No, but you could have gone to 100% if the Glazers had fucked off. I mean, don't try and polish a turd here. In my opinion, this is a turd. And, you know, if it was the only... Somebody said to me 2 years ago, you'd have snapped your hands off for this. Yes, I would. Of course I would. Of course I would. 2 years ago, I'd have took 25% from Sir Jim over the Glazers. Of course I would, because I don't like the Glazers. But that's not the scenario. Somebody wanted to buy all the club and hit the reset button, and we're not doing it because of Sir Jim. So it's a different scenario. It's so frustrating to be in a position where I have no control or influence I deeply care about, says Delicate Official. We now just have to somehow put up with it and move on as United fans, always wondering what might have been, says Hope for Best, says Delicate Official. Michael has just gifted 5 memberships. You're a legend. What can we, the fans, do to get the Glazers out now, says Abhishek. Look, I don't know. I don't know. I think that, for me... I'm a cynic, and I'm not going to change my mind, because I can't see any reason to change my mind at the moment. I feel that, you know, you're almost being castigated and criticised for being negative, but history's already taught us about this. You know, giving something that doesn't smell right a chance, it ends up being shit. 2005, this reminds me a lot of 2005. And I was one of those people that were like, let's just wait and see. Sir Alex Ferguson is involved in this deal. Let's just wait and see. I know it doesn't sound great being bought on debt, but you never know. There might be a plan to clear the debt very quickly. We're very successful. And I gave it a chance in 2005. And I wish I'd listened. I wish I hadn't. Because those legends that said it was going to be a bad deal were correct. And then unfortunately in 2023 it feels like the same thing's happening, and I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. So I'm going to shout from the rooftops, like some people are, that this smells like shit, and I don't like it, and I'm not going to get behind it just because it might be good, because some people say it will be good. Mark, so what if Sir Jim didn't buy and we only had the Qatar bid? Do you think the Glazers would have to sell? Yes, Yusuf, yes, 100%. The Glazers could not do nothing. So if Sir Jim Ratcliffe had walked away, we would be owned by Qatar, because they had to do something. They had to do something. Otherwise, they'd have done nothing. They wouldn't have sold anything. Mid-table owner and mid-table players equal to mid-table club. Accept it and move on, says Minnie. August 2022, Michael Keaton, friends of Sir Jim Ratcliffe, said the Glazers won't own the club in a year. 3 months later, the club was up for sale. This was all planned, says Mal. Sir Jim is 71. If this is a multi-year process, Father Time is against him. We'll be left owned by a company with no loyalty to us and banks lurking, says Aldo. And did you see rumours that Sir Jim is in favour of more British players? Do you think it's true, says Shahin? Look, I don't know, but there was a few things I wanted to talk to you about a quick fix. But there's a raft of information there over the great thing about this long process is that there's a raft of information. Some of it got retweeted on the United Stand Twitter account today, so it's worth going through some of it. But some of it just made my eyes, go, what? So back in February, I think it was the Times was reporting that 2 American investment funds were willing to bankroll Sir Jim Ratcliffe's purchase of Manchester United. So this 1.3 billion that he's going to use isn't even his own money. Reportedly, it's going to be lent to him by US investment banks. So, I mean, I think there's a number of questions. Look, there's a few people who've spoken about some stuff today, and there's a raft of questions that need to be answered. Who's ultimately in control of the club? I think we know that's the Glazers. What is actually the plan to run the club over the next 3 years? Not what happens in 3 years. How does the club function over the next 3 years? We've got hundreds of millions of pounds of debt. Hundreds of millions of pounds of debt. We've got players on ridiculous wages that aren't good enough. I mean, what's Sir Jim Ratcliffe going to do about the Jadon Sancho thing? Because he's not Qatar. He can't just say, piss off, we'll take £100 million hit on your wages and your fee. He can't do that with Harry Maguire either. He can't, you know, what's going to happen with Marcus Rashford if he doesn't start playing well? He's just been given a 350 grand a week contract. I mean, it's all well and good to say, I'm here to put the Manchester back in Manchester United, which I absolutely do not understand what that means, by the way. I'm here to put the Manchester back into Manchester United was Sir Jim's line back in January. We live in a really diverse world, Jim, where Man United's a worldwide fan base. So what does putting Manchester back into Manchester United mean? For me, Manchester was always in Manchester United. So I don't know what the long-term plan's going to be. And for me, I think that when you move through the frustration, and you may not, but when you do, you have to start listing off all the things you would like to know. And I ultimately think as a football club fan, we don't necessarily get told those things, but I think it's so important. I mean, Sean says this is worse than 2005. I've been trying to stop my boys supporting City. How do I do it now? I'm done with United, says Sean. And I think that there's just a multitude of things we need to know. The 1.3 billion, let's go through them. The 1.3 billion that Sir Jim Ratcliffe is giving to the Glazers for their 25% and the shareholders, how much of that money is going into Manchester United? Because I would say it could be nothing. 12.5% is buying of the Glazers and 12.5% is buying from the shareholders. Why would the shareholders put that money back into the club? So I would imagine at least half of that 1.3 billion won't touch Man United. And that leaves the Glazers 12.5%. Well, why would the Glazers put any of their own money in? They've never put any money in. So first question is, how much of that 1.3 billion that Sir Jim has borrowed is going to go into the football club? I would say it could be none. Second point, how powerful is Sir Jim Ratcliffe's 25%? You know, people are saying he's going to have responsibility for the sporting side of things. Is that the Glazers putting him up as a fall guy because they can go, it's nothing to do with us when we fail on the pitch, but they still own the club? You know, what does that entail? What's the structure of the board now? You know, what's the voting rights? Are there any voting rights of Sir Jim? What's the long-term sale of the club to Sir Jim Ratcliffe? You know, is it 50% in 3 years? Is it 100% in 9 years? Is it 100% in 3 years? And do the Glazers have to sell? What happens if the football club, in 3 years' time, the 3 p.m. blackout is gone and United are signing, you know, creating their own online season tickets, which is making them, you know, billions, and the club is suddenly worth 10 billion? How the fuck is Sir Jim Ratcliffe buying the club for 10 billion in 3 years' time? These are all relevant questions. I mean, look, if a Super League comes back, or more importantly, a TV deal gets done where you can sell your own rights to every single game, United will be worth 10 billion in a very short period of time. What happens then? Sir Jim's doubled his 25% to 3 billion. I'm okay with that. You know, the Glazers have got 7 billion locked up in the club instead of 5. Does anything change? These are all relevant questions that people are going, oh, in 3 years' time, it's going to be absolutely fine. What happens if we don't qualify for the Champions League for 3 years in a row? You know, what happens if brands start pulling out because we're shit? What happens with people, these players that are on stupid wages that we can't sell, but we're still in debt? There's a multitude of questions that people don't want to answer because they're going, we're getting Paul Mitchell as a director of football, and Sir Jim's going to be in charge of the sporting stuff. I just think there's an absolute list of questions, and there's a lot more than I've said there. The debt's still there. We're still shit. We've still got loads of players that aren't good enough. The stadium still needs building. The Glazers are still in charge. And in 3 years' time, a lot can happen, negatively and positively. So I just don't... As I said, if you want Sir Jim and the Glazers, that's up to you. You know, you've changed your opinion very quickly, but that's up to you. But I can't sit here honestly in front of you tonight and say there's any part of me that feels any different than I did 24 hours ago, because there's too many question marks. There's too many areas where it's like really fuzzy. All I'm hearing is oh, so Jim's going to take over the sporting side of things and Paul Mitchell might be the director of football. But nobody's explaining to me what difference that makes. I mean, one of the big things as well, Vij says, I'm disappointed with the sale. If Sir Jim Radcliffe recruits Paul Mitchell and manages the football role and sacks John Murtough, I'm fine with that. Otherwise, a waste. And that's all it takes, Vij. You know, if we sack John Murtough and we bring Paul Mitchell in, that's enough for you. And that's why we fail as a football club. Because there are people who will literally get behind Sir Jim if he sacks John Murtough. I mean, that is like the tiniest speck of dirt on an earth of shit. You know, that's not going to make a big difference. Now it feels like we had so many problems, and instead of finding solutions, we had another problem that we have to deal with, says Yusuf. Qatar have been played so bad, I hope they come back when the share price plummets to save this farce, says Arna. So look, I think that one thing as well that's really worth considering, Qatar turned PSG into a laughing stock, says Red Army. You think Harry Maguire's the best centre-back in the world, mate, so that's my answer to you. Look, financial fair play still exists at this football club. Sir Jim Radcliffe and Paul Mitchell are not going to change the fact that this football club is in debt, that its revenue streams aren't good enough, and we're not very good on the pitch. So those three things straight away, right? We're in massive debt. Our financial fair play model is bad because our wages are huge. There's not much to spend. And our revenue streams aren't that great either. So Paul Mitchell comes in and people are thinking we're going to buy Mbappe, De Jong. And I'm like, we can't. We literally can't do it. Because even if somebody had 300 million, we can't do it. Because you've got to reduce the wage bill. Because the revenue against the wage bill is really small gap. And that's all we've got to spend. So with the debt and the wage bill and the revenue, how the fuck are we going to start spending money? The only way for that to happen was a full sale, clearance of the debt, and somebody with a load of money that they can chuck at the club. Now, remember, we're still owned by the Glazers, and people are getting locked into this mentality that Sir Jim Radcliffe's going to come in and go, there's 400 million quid to spend on players. Why would he do that? He doesn't own the football club. And where is that money going to come from? Now, I think he might have 3 billion that he's borrowed from JP Morgan or Stanley or whatever they're called. Because remember, he was going to try and buy 50% of the club. But the question has to be, if he's giving 1.4 billion to the Glazers for 25%, is he then going to pump in another billion of his own money for stadia and players, etc.? And how the hell does that work when you only own 25%? And this is what I mean. There are so many questions that need answering that people don't have the answers to. Worst case scenario, he comes in, works on a budget and is doing it for a vanity project because he wants to be involved in Man United. Best case scenario, he does get hold of the club in 3 years' time. He does pump a lot of money in and we all live happily ever after. But to be optimistic about this situation is to be massively naive because we've got no details. We've got no idea. What we do know is the club could have been sold yesterday and be under new hands with rich owners, just like Man City. But instead, we are still owned by the Glazers and we've got this guy who really is doing it because he thinks he can turn Man United around. And his track record in football isn't very good. And people will say, well, Nice have done relatively well. Not really compared to what he offered to do there and what he was meant to do there. And I don't think it's necessarily a hard job to go to somewhere like Nice. I think he certainly could have done a better job. You know, with the resources he's got and the expertise he's got, I think he could have done a better job. What can we've done that one. This potential deal is a walking red flag. I'm gutted we didn't get Qatar. I'm trying to figure out how to move forward mentally, says Tony. And Sheikh Jazim offered us a golden ticket and the Glazers refused it, knowing how much it would benefit the club for their own gain, says Jack. Yeah, and I think, look, forget Sir Jim for a moment and forget... And I want to take your questions because I know a lot of people are like struggling with what's going to happen. Lee Ellis says rebuilds take time, Mark. Well, they do, Lee. But I'll take you back to my analogy at the start. If Qatar had been doing the rebuild, it's like getting to the other side of the country in a Ferrari. It will take a bit of time, but you'll get there very, very quickly. Sir Jim's rebuild with the Glazers is like walking it in bare feet across, swimming across shark-infested waters and, cold polar bear infested snow. I agree, Lee, it's going to take time, but you can't tell me that we would have got there a lot quicker with Qatar than we will do with Sejim. Maybe we will get there with Sejim, but it's going to take a long time. And if you, as I said, all these people talking about patience make me laugh. Because when we lose to Man City in a couple of weeks, they'll all be going fucking mad like they were against Palace. But, waiting for a question mark in 3 years' time, people are like, it's fine. Look, Rome wasn't built in a day. Let's take our time. And they're going to wait 3 years for this thing in the future that is basically a massive question mark. Like, in 3 years' time, we might not be owned by Sejim. We might still be in debt with the Glazers here. And people are going to wait 3 years to find out. It's like waiting 3 years to open up your Christmas presents. And you might not get a PS5. You might get socks. Like, people don't even know what's at the end of the tunnel, and they're running down there. It's like running down a tunnel to a cave where someone says there might be a pot of gold down there. You get down there and it's a big fucking bear who eats you. Like, you don't know what's down there. Oh, but this journalist said this. Oh, Sir Jim says this. But United are putting out this. Oh, we're now trusting Sir Jim Radcliffe and the Glazers, are we? Oh, that's what we're doing. I tell you what, off you lot go on your cave expedition. I ain't fucking going. I'm going to wait up here. And if it is gold, you can shout up and I'll hear from the echo that it's gold and I'll come down and have a look. But I'm not going on that expedition. No way. This is 2005 all over again. This whole scenario is precarious. If it collapses, the club will be in a world of trouble, says Emily. And how much debt's allowed until the Premier League intervenes? Any other club would be put in administration. Rob Dawson said owners can be put there for if they don't meet FFP, says MJR. Some other channels are backing Sir Jim Radcliffe because he was at the 99 final, throwing a bit of nostalgia, and some fans will drop their pants and bend over, says Adam. Are they buying 25% from the Glazers or just from the pool of stocks outstanding? There's a huge difference. Well, this is it, Lee. We need to know that as well. Look, as for Sir Jim Radcliffe being at the 99 final, I mean, I don't think anybody is questioning the fact that he's a Manchester United fan. But what I would say is he'd be Chelsea's owner if they'd said yes. He'd be Barcelona's owner if they'd said yes. He's Nice's owner at the moment. I mean, does he not strike you as a little bit of a desperado? I'm a born and bred Man United fan. This is my dream to own Man United. Well, it may well have been, but you also tried to buy Chelsea. You also tried to buy Barcelona. I think you're a guy who wants to own a football club. That's who I think you are. And I think, yeah, you've got Man United, but, you wanted to buy a football club. And, at the end of the day, he's a Man United fan, so that makes it okay that he got into bed with the Glazers. I'm sure there's plenty of Man United fans who are in prison for quite serious crimes. Doesn't mean that you want them, doesn't mean they're a great guy or gal. So Jim's way is simply we may. Qatar's was simply we will, says Peter. Look, I want to take some of your questions now because I don't know. Look, there was a journalist from The Athletic today saying that Man United fans need to be mature and patient and stop making judgments until they know what's going to happen. And I felt like telling them to fuck off, to be honest, because I felt like saying, what do you mean we've got to be patient and not be immature? That literally in 2005... people were patient and mature, and look what happened. What people are forgetting here is they're trying to make out that Sir Jim is buying the club now. The Glazers still own this football club, not Sir Jim Radcliffe. He might have a say on the sporting direction of the football club, but he's just a glorified puppet. The Glazers own the football club. And I've heard so many people say, a billionaire owner of multinational companies knows what he's doing in the boardroom. Does he? Why did he not buy Chelsea then? Why did he not buy Barcelona? Why are Nice not doing that great? If he's such a fucking expert in football, then why is it third time lucky for him in getting Man United? And also, why did he go from 100% to 70% to 50% to 25% if he's such a master tactician in the boardroom? Or has he actually just gone, whatever you want, I will do to get a foot in the door at Man United? But that's speculation from me, I admit that. But you've actually got people out there preaching that Sir Jim is some sort of footballing goddess genius when it comes to the boardroom, and that he's signed some deal with the Glazers that's going to make them basically walk out the club potless. And I'm like, you're having a fucking laugh. If there's one thing about the Glazers that irritates me, they know nothing about football, but they know very, very, very much about business and how to fuck this club over. And I just don't believe for one moment that Sir Jim Ratcliffe is in control of this deal. I think there's a plan in place for his side, but I don't think he's in control. And I think it's worth spending time going back on articles about Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Qatar from January and reading things about how Sir Jim's bid's being bankrolled from US investment banks' debt, how they will not clear the debt at Manchester United either, how he wanted to buy 100%, and then it was 70%, and then it was 50%, and now it's 25%. I just think there's a lot of red flags here, and there's a lot of questions that need to be answered that may never get answered. But then there's a lot of people out there going, oh, forget about all this negativity. Let's just go. Come on, let's just do it. And I'm like, it literally is like, oh, it's like night swimming, isn't it? It's like you're in the outback, and there's a nice little creek, and everyone's having a barbecue and a few tinnies, and somebody says, come on, let's get our clothes off and go for a swim, and somebody says, yeah, that there could be crocodiles in there. Oh, don't listen to him. We'll be fine. We'll be absolutely fine. Come on, let's go. And somebody's going, no, there really could be crocodiles in there, and it's also pitch black, and we literally could get eaten. It's a really silly idea to get behind you and follow you. Oh, look at that negative twat. Everyone follow me. Come on. Never to be seen again. But that's what I feel about this. Like, I don't want to. There's part of me that's like, I don't want. What's the point in moaning? Like, the deal's done. It's over. We failed. It's going to be Sir Jim, and it's going to be the Glazers staying in control. But I can't. But even though I know that, I can't just go, oh, let's just hope and pray and let's see if it works, because I really do feel like every there's too many red flags, and I'm not getting in the water. I'm not going in, and I might be left on my own on the side. And you know what? You might have a great time swimming in that little creek, but you might also get eaten. And I'm not. I just don't trust it. I just think it's dodgy. At the moment, it's very, very dodgy. I'm sure we're going to get some information coming out. There has to be some information coming out. And as I said, I certainly think we'll buy some players. I think Todibo is definitely going to sign for Man United. He fucking plays for Nice. And it was a player that Ten Hag wanted in the summer. So I think Todibo will end up coming, and maybe that Paul Mitchell will come, and I think we'll buy a couple of more players. But on a very basic level, are Man City, Newcastle, Arsenal, Liverpool going to shit themselves because we get Paul Mitchell and Todibo? I don't think they will. I think United have to finish in the top four every season because they need the money. And are we going to do that? I don't think we'll even do it this year. So I just think there's... I don't think there's a reason to be positive. I can't find one at the moment. Doesn't mean it won't be. As I said at the start of the show, look, this could work out. I don't think it will, but it could work out. But I certainly just can't get behind it. And I saw somebody on Twitter saying it today. They were like, we've already lost because there's people who have just decided that this is fine and we're not going to say anything about it and we'll just see what happens. Look, to be honest with you, deal with it. There are people out there that are just happy Sir Jim's won because, Brexit means Brexit. They literally wanted the British option. They didn't want the foreign option. They didn't want the state-owned option. They didn't want the sports washing. And yet Sir Jim Ratcliffe could be accused of being greenwashing, all the petrochemicals, things he does to the environment. So, ultimately some people wanted Sir Jim because he's from Manchester and he's British. People might hate that and say, all sorts of things, but there will be people like that. I've seen them on Twitter already. They're almost running around in the Union Jack shorts. But that doesn't bother me. That really doesn't bother me because you're always going to get different opinions. Rival fans love it. They absolutely love it. And you know why they love it? The same reason I'd love it if Liverpool were going to get bought by a multi-billionaire and then suddenly it fell through and they got stuck with FSG. I'd love it. I'd absolutely love it. If Arsenal were going to get bought by Elon Musk and then suddenly it fell through and they stayed with Kroenke, I'd love it. So, I absolutely do not have a problem with anybody's different opinions. I might disagree with them, but rival fans are loving this, and you always get the best hint of what the situation is with your football club when rival fans react. And when rival fans are absolutely over the moon that Sir Jim's brought into this football club, you know this is a problem. It's the same when Fellaini used to get picked and they'd love it. Like, you can learn a lot from how rival fans react. Because I tell you what, if we'd got Qatar, they'd have shut up. They'd have been worried. You know what? If we'd got Qatar, they would have called us what they call Man City. Because they would have been worried. So, but yeah, we'll see what happens this week. My feeling is that we will just get bombarded with a load of positive stories about, here's a picture of what the new stadium's going to look like, and United are looking at Mbappe, De Jong, and this, that, and the other. But we've already been there. Like, we've already been there. Like, we've had that with the Glazers, where we're going to buy these players and we never do. Or we've had one good summer transfer window and the next one's crap. This is nothing new. We've seen pictures of what Old Trafford can look like as well. But as I say, if you live in the real world, the immediate problems with Manchester United are there in plain sight. The debt, the imbalance between wages and revenue, which fucks us financial fair play wise. The problems with the players that we've got who aren't good enough but are on huge wages. The imbalance of the team, the fitness department, the recruitment team, the board. There's so many problems at that football club. The infrastructure, the stadia, the fact that our rivals don't have these problems and have got a much better football clubs. It's a huge, huge job, and I don't think you can do it. I don't think you can do it on hard work. I really don't. I said it a few months ago, and it might be sad to some people, but I felt that, whether you like it or not, the only possible saviour for Manchester United was a Man City model. And, I'd love to get proven wrong. I really, really would. But I just think the club's gone too far. I think even someone like Gary Neville on his tweet today knows that. He was talking about a Manchester world around Old Trafford where there's just, money spent in and around Old Trafford on infrastructure, on, transport and hotels and shopping centres, the lot. That's what Gary Neville was even talking about. Like, that's what he wanted to see from Man United. This huge investment into the club, all around the club, because even Gary Neville knows that. He knows that this football club it's not a quick fix anymore. There is no quick fix. We've had nearly 20 years of deterioration, and the only way to fix that is by removing that cancer from the club and investing huge amounts of money in all the areas that they've let rot, really. How does Sir Jim Ratcliffe, with 25%, make big impacts on Manchester United when the cause of those problems is still there and there is boss? I mean, that's a very good way of putting it, isn't it? At least if somebody like Qatar had bought us, you know that the area around Manchester, Old Trafford, is going to get invested in. You know the stadia, you know the infrastructure, you know the squad, you know the debt's gone. You know all that's going to happen. Will we be successful? Who knows? But you know the core fundamentals are going to get spent on. How does Sir Jim Ratcliffe, even if he's got the money, which many of us think he hasn't got, how does Sir Jim Ratcliffe build around Old Trafford? Build Old Trafford, clear the debt, build the infrastructure, improve the squad. How does he do all of that when he only owns 25%? How does he do it? And people don't want to talk about that because they're talking about, look, life's for living as well. Like, this fucking in 3 years' time, have you got 3 years to just waste? Have we got 3 years to just, be babysat by the Glazers? I mean, I can't understand that mentality, It's like a prison sentence. I can't understand these people who are going, oh, I think it'll work out. Let's see what happens in 3 years' time. Like writing off 3 years is okay. Like, I don't get that mentality. 3 years ago, we were in COVID. Like, 3 years ago was COVID. Like, it's a long time ago. And people are writing it off going, well, 3 years' time, it might be okay. And all the time in my mind, I'm like, 3 years. Somebody was going to buy the whole club and start tomorrow. And we're waiting 3 years for somebody who hasn't got that money. There's still time to buy all of the club, at least 4 or 5 days, just hoping for a major turnaround. The stock drop tomorrow will be huge, says Arna. Mark, Sir Jim Ratcliffe investment for fracking purposes, in my opinion, says LDG. Scrap the 3 p.m. blackout, launch a Premier League app, pay for one subscription instead of all these mad TV subs. Watch any game you want, please, says JJ. JJ, I actually agree with you. But you know who else agrees with us? The Glazers. If they scrap the 3 p.m. blackout, which there's talk of it happening, and they launch a Premier League app where you can pay one subscription, Manchester United will be worth 10 billion overnight. And the Glazers know that. That's the one I've always known would make the club and Liverpool and everybody else a shitload of money. If suddenly there's a Premier League app where you can buy a season ticket for Manchester United for all the games, every TV deal in the world changes. And the TV structure in the UK changes, more importantly. And suddenly all that money is different, because Man United and Liverpool will go, how many people who are buying that Premier League subscription support Liverpool or Man United? Why are you distributing the money out fairly to fucking Bournemouth when they haven't got anywhere near the fans we've got? We want a bigger slice of the pie, and the pie will be fucking huge. There'll be huge money in that, JJ. And I mentioned it at the start of the show. I think that, I'm not even going to say if you don't think this, you're an idiot. Like, can I just say this? Regardless of what you think about Qatar, regardless of what you think about fans arguing, and regardless about what you think about Sir Jim Radcliffe, hold this thought. Why are the Glazers still owning this football club? Why didn't they sell the club to Qatar or Sir Jim? Why didn't they sell the off? Because Sir Jim was looking for 100% at the start. Why didn't the Glazers sell the club and go? No one likes them. They don't know what they're doing. They've bled the club dry. They're probably not going to get any more dividends. Why did the Glazers not sell and take £1 billion each for zero investment? Why didn't they go? Nobody's really talking about this. They're all talking about Sir Jim's plan and 25% and Paul Mitchell. But why are the Glazers still here? Why did they not sell the whole club and go? They don't care about it, so why didn't they sell? Why are we still owned by the Glazers this year, next year and the year after? And the cold, harsh fact is, because they want to own this football club a little bit longer. And they've only ever owned the football club to make money for themselves. So if they want to keep hold of the club for 3 years or longer, why are they doing it? Because there's something going to happen that's going to make that 5 billion they could have took from Qatar a lot more than 5 billion in 3 years' time. And if you don't believe that, then I have nothing to say. Because they could have walked away with 5 billion quid tonight. And they're waiting 3 years. What? Why? Why are they waiting? Because they know there's a chance of making a hell of a lot more money. They know there's something. They were one of the architects of the Super League. They're still owning our football club. There will be something coming where they're going to make a lot of money. And Sir Jim has allowed them to do that. And that's what's going to happen. That's what they're waiting for. Anyway, you look at it, we won't win anything significant for 5 years, says Abhishek. Jazim was on the board of Credit Suisse and lost hundreds of millions when it went under. He's by no means a sure thing in management, says Ben. Yeah, but I think somebody who's going to buy all of the club, clear the debt, build the stadium, build the infrastructure and spend money on players is a lot better than what we've got at the moment. I'm sure, I can't answer it any better than that. As a fan base, we're being patronised. This is not the sale of the club. It's just an investment. Glazers at it again, spinning yarns, never for sale in the first place, says Mike. 25% on loan. How's he even going to buy the rest? From one loan shark to the next. This is worse than 2005 if the Premier League allows it, says Azet. Yeah, well, I don't think anything is going to stop it, mate. And but look, I await the next few days because we're going to get more and more information. I actually hope that Sir Jim Radcliffe puts the truth out, because what will really annoy me is that FSG have done the same at Liverpool, Bard, by the way. FSG were looking to sell a year ago, and I actually applauded them because I thought they were selling because they took Liverpool as far as they could, and they can't compete with the Newcastles and the Man Cities because they don't have the money. And I thought FSG was selling Liverpool for that reason, because they'd said, look, we do care about the football club, we've took it as far as we can, now we're going to sell it to somebody who can put a load of money in. And then suddenly they weren't selling the football club anymore. And I think you're right. Why are FSG not selling anymore? And why are the Glazers not selling anymore? And yet both of them are American owners that were part of the Super League. I think they both know something's coming down the road. And look, it's not really impacting Liverpool massively at the moment. Chris the Red, thanks very much for your super chat. But I think you're right. I think FSG and the Glazers are expecting something to come down the road. And, you're probably right. It's just what it's going to be, isn't it? I don't know. I don't know. But look, I hope we do get some facts that come out soon from Sir Jim Radcliffe's camp, because what will get really irritating is listening to these, United fan Twitter accounts that are actually just, payroll of the Glazers and Sir Jim putting out false narratives about what's going to happen when actually they don't know what's going to happen. There's some journalists doing it as well. Oh, yeah, well, he wouldn't do this if this wasn't going to happen. But you don't know what's going to happen. I really think it's important that we keep asking the questions and we try and get the answers. But we might get lied to. We might get lied to. How many times have we been lied to by the Glazers, and they are still the owners of this football club? So, Red Army says match-going fans would have rioted against Qatar. Well, they should riot against the Jim then, because the Glazers are still in charge, mate. Bit of a contradiction there. I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong. Maybe there would have been protests against Qatar, but why would they riot against Qatar, but they're not rioting against the Glazers who fucking destroyed the club for 20 years and are still in charge of it now? Yeah, maybe you need to think before you type, mate, because you're basically coming across as saying that, the Glazers are better for this football club than Qatar, which is absolutely incredible to me. Absolutely incredible. You're acting like we've been sold to Sir Jim Radcliffe as well. We haven't. He's buying 25% and we don't even know what that's all about. We're owned by the Glazers, mate. That's who's won. We're still a Glazer-owned football club. Argue with me. You know it's true. Is this the end of our aspirations as a football club, says Asset? Well, you never say never. You never say never. You never know what's going to happen with football. But, can you please permanently remove at United We Stand is a troll, provoking the community? Well, Chris, there should be mods in the chat who can do that. I mean, I'm not a moderator. But if I see him, I'll get rid of him. But there we go. Anyway, look, it's 9 o'clock. I've said what I've said. I think we're in for a big week. Tomorrow we've got a call-in. We've started doing the call-in. So tomorrow we're going to do a call-in at 2 o'clock. So make sure you get involved in that. I don't see positivity in the future, Mark, says Shun. And we'd love to, we really want to get into that tomorrow. So make sure that after the morning show, which I'll be on at 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock tomorrow, we're going to do a call-in. So get ready for that, because I think it's going to be really important to get the sound bites from the people who matter, which is you. Get involved in that. I think FSG did get some investment, Marvin, as well. I think you're right on that one. Anyway, look, thanks everyone for tuning in. Difficult times. Questions need to be answered. All I would say is, and I don't tell anybody what to think, but there's a lot of people putting a lot of stuff out there both ways at the moment about what's going to happen and what's not going to happen. I can say to you this: in 3 years' time, the Glazers say to Sir Jim, we don't want to sell you the rest of the club. You can keep your 25% or you can fuck off. On the other hand, people are saying in 3 years' time you'll buy it all for $5 billion. Who's right? Neither of us. We don't know. And that's even scarier than the truth. We don't know what's going to happen in 3 years. We don't know what's going to happen within the next 3 years. We don't know what's going to happen. So don't listen to people telling you what's going to happen when they don't know what's going to happen. Nobody knows what's going to happen at the moment because the detail hasn't been released. But I'll tell you for one thing, what is going to happen is the Glazers are going to own this football club for 3 years at least. And if they own the club for 3 years at least, they've already got a track record of bleeding it dry. So their plan is to bleed it dry. And in 3 years' time when they sell it, Sir Jim's got to pay them off. He's still going to have to pay billions of pounds to them to go. Billions of pounds that should be coming into the fucking football club. So there's so many questions that need to be answered. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see if those questions do get answered. Thanks everyone for watching. Take care. It is what it is. Try and stay strong. We're in it together. And you're very welcome on the channel. There we go. United We Stand. I found you. Right, I'm going to read some of your chats now. Could be your last. Take care, everyone. Speak to you all in a bit.